The night was suffocatingly quiet, the kind of silence that passed against your ears and made your skin crawl. I sat in the living room, my dolls scattered across the floor in front of me. Dad was at the dining table, his fingers moving furiously over his laptop keyboard. Mom was in the kitchen, the soft clanks of pot, the only sound breaking the oppressive stillness. It was just another eventful evening until I heard it. I was faint at first, but a branch brushing against the door, and then it grew louder, more deliberate. Scratch, scratch. I froze, my doll mid there in my hand. Mom, I cried out, what is it, Ada? Her voice drifted from the kitchen, calm and concerned. There's something at the door. It's probably nothing, Dad said without looking up from his laptop. Ignore it. Scratch, scratch. The sound didn't stop. It was insistent, like a demand. I stared at the door, life expecting it to burst open. Ada, don't open it. Dad's voice was sharper now, edged with something I couldn't place fair. But I couldn't help myself. Something about the sound, about the moment, was pulling me towards the door. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. Slowly I turned it, the cold metal slick against my palm. The door creaked open, revealing the darkness outside. At first, I saw nothing but shadows, and then it stepped into the light. A dog. No, not just a dog. A thin, maggy frame shivering in the night air. Its black fur patched and dull, its eyes, God, its eyes, glowed faintly in the dim porch light. They weren't the eyes of a dog. They were sharp, almost human, filled with an intelligence that made my heart chest tighten. What is it? Mom's voice came from behind me. A dog, I whispered. Unable to tear my gaze away, Mom leaned over my shadow and gasped softly. Oh, poor thing, it looks so hungry. Don't feed it, Dad said from the dining table, his tone firm. I'll stay if you. Mom ignored him. She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a bowl of leftover rice and fish. She placed it on the pouch, and the dog just stared at her. It didn't move, it didn't sniff the food, his eyes stayed locked on mine. Can we keep it? I blurted out, though I don't know why. No, Dad snapped. Yes, Mom said firmly. It looks harmless, and it will keep the rats away. The dog finally moved, stepping towards the food. Its steps were slow, deliberate, but it was measuring each one. It ate quietly, its eyes still flicking to me between bites. That night, I woke to a sound that made my heart run cold. A growl, low, guttered, and coming from the foot of my bed. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was dark, but the faint glow of moonlight from the window was enough to reveal it. The dog. It was sitting there, perfectly still, his glowing eye fixed on me. The growl deepened, rumbling through the room like distant thunder. Go away, I whispered, my voice trembling. The dog didn't move, and then it did something that made my stomach twist. It smiled. Its lips curled back, revealing yellow teeth, and a sound emerged. Not a growl, but something eerily close to laughter. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I told my parents about the dog in my room. It's just a dream, Mom said, stirring sugar in her tea. But it was there. I saw it. I insisted. Ada, stop making things up, Dad said, his voice dismissive. I gave up trying to convince them, but I knew what I saw. The dog was everywhere after that. He followed me around the house, its eyes always on me. It didn't bark, didn't wag its tail. It was unnervingly quiet, like it was watching, waiting. Then the dream started. And the first one was standing in an empty field. The sky above me, dark and endless. The dog was there, but it wasn't a dog anymore. It was a woman, frail and old, with old gray hair that whipped around her face like smoke. Her eyes glowed with just like the dog. Why did you forget me? She hissed, her voice echoing in the emptiness. Who are you? I asked, my voice shaking. You'll remember, she said, her lips curling into the crow's smile. I woke up drenched in sweat. The dog's behavior grew stranger by the day. He wouldn't let anyone else near it, not mom, not dad. He'd only listen to me, and even then, his attention felt wrong, like it was seizing me up. One night, I heard a loud crash from my parents' bedroom. I ran to find mom sitting on the bed, her face pale, her eyes trembling, blood soaked the sheet. Dad rushed her to the hospital. The doctor said she's lost the baby. The explanation was vague. Her body just rejected the pregnancy, one of them said, shaking her head. When we got home, the dog was sitting in the living room, its head tilted, his tail wagging slowly. He looked at mom, then at me, and his lip curled into that same chilling smile. The dog started following me to school. It would sit outside the gate, waiting, its glowing eyes tracking my every move. The other kids whispered about it, calling it creepy. One day, a teacher tried to chase it away. The dog lunged at him, his teeth bared, and he fell back, screaming. The headmistress called my parents. It's just a stray. Dad said when they got home, get rid of it, Ada. But mom refused. It's harmless, she said. It's just protective. Protective wasn't the word I would use. That night, I caught the dog staring at the family portrait in the living room. His gaze was fixed on one face in particular, my grandmother's. The whisper began that night. It started at a soft hum, barely inaudible. I thought it was the wind until the sound grew sharper, clearer, like words being murmured just out of reach. I sat up in bed, my chest tightened with unease. Who's there? I whispered in the dark. The whispers stopped. Then from downstairs I heard the sound of claws clicking against the tiled floor. The dog. I crept out of bed, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. The house was silent. As I made my way down the stairs, the dog was sitting in front of the storeroom door, its head tilted, its eyes glowing fixed on me. The storeroom had always been off limits. Mom said it was where she kept things that reminded her of the past, things she didn't like to talk about. The whisper started again, louder than this time. It was coming from inside the storeroom. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. The dog growled low and deep, but it didn't stop me. Something was pulling me towards that door, a force I couldn't explain. I turned the knob, the door creaked open, revealing the cramped, dusty room. Boxes were stacked hazardly, and the air was thick and the smell of old woods and mothballs. At the center of the room was a trunk, its lid slightly ajar. I approached it slowly, my hands trembling. Inside, I found an old photograph. It was my grandmother. She was younger in the picture, but her piercing eyes were unmistakably. She was staring directly into the camera, her expression unreadable. The whisper stopped. I turned to leave, but the dog was blocking the doorway. His growl filling the room. Move, I said, my voice breaking. It didn't move. Instead, it lunged forward and grabbed the photograph from my hand. Before I could react, it bolted out of the room and disappeared into the shadows. The nightmare returned that night. I was back in the dark field, the old woman standing before me, but this time she was closer, her face twisted with rage. You buried me like I was nothing, she spat, her voice venomous. No tears, no respect. Is that how you repay me for everything I did? I don't understand, I cried. Who are you? She stepped closer and her face shifted. Her grey hair turned black, her frail frame straightened, and her features became familiar. Grandma, I whispered, now you remember. I woke up screaming. Over the next few days, the dog's behavior became even more unsettling. It started pacing around my parents' bedroom at night, its growl echoing through the halls. Mom suffered another miscarriage, her body growing weaker with each one. The doctors were baffled. There is no medical explanation for this, one of them said. I knew better. One afternoon, I caught the dog in the backyard digging frantically. I approached cautiously, my breath catching when I saw what was underneath. A small wooden box. Inside were old trinkets, a pair of earrings, a handkerchief embroidered with the initial M.E., and a faded photograph of my grandma holding a baby. What are you trying to tell me? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. The dog didn't respond. He just stared at me with those haunting eyes, his expression almost sad. The whispers grew louder, more insistent than ever before. Come, I followed it downstairs, my feet moving as if controlled by an unseen force. The dog was waiting for me in the living room, his tail wagging slowly. You know now, the voice said, but it wasn't coming from the door. It was inside my head, a cold, rasping sound that sent chills down my spine. Grandma, the dog's head tilted, and for a moment, its form seemed to shimmer. I was wrong, the voice said, forgotten, disrespected. I didn't know, I whispered. You will help me, the voice continued. We will make them pay. I don't want to hurt anyone, I cried. The dog growled, and the room grew colder. You don't have a choice. The next day, Mom fell ill. She couldn't get out of bed, her face pale and her body trembling with fever. Dad was frantic, but the doctors found nothing wrong with her. The dog stayed by her bedside, its eye growing brighter than ever. That night, I woke to find it sitting at the foot of my bed. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice shaking. It didn't answer. Instead, it climbed onto the bed and lay down beside me, its head resting on my lap. For the first time, it seemed gentle, almost loving. And then I heard the voice again. We are family, Ada. Families protect each other. The days passed in a blur, each one more suffocating than the last. Mom's condition worsened, and the whispers became constant. They followed me everywhere in the hall, in my dreams, even in the silent moments when I thought I was alone. The dog was always there, his glowing eyes watching my every move. But it wasn't just the dog anymore. The shadows in the house had taken on a life of their own. At night, I'll see them shift in the corners of my room, darting just out of sight. One evening, I found myself back in the storeroom. I didn't know why I went there. It was as though something had drawn me to. The air inside was thick, almost suffocating. My fingers trembled as I rummaged through the old boxes, desperate to find something, anything that could make sense of what was happening. At the bottom of one box, I found a diary. The leather cover was cracked with age, and the pages smelled of dust and time. It belonged to my grandmother. June 12th. I've given my life to this family, but I am invisible to them. Even my daughter, my only child, barely looks at me anymore. They will miss me when I'm gone. July 3rd. I've been feeling weaker lately. They don't notice. No one cares. I won't let them forget me. Not ever. August 9th. If they don't remember me in life, they will in death. The diary slipped from my hands. My chest felt tight, my breath coming in short gasps. I turned to leave, but the dog was there, blocking the door. He stared at me, his expression unreadable. And then he spoke, not in words, but in the same haunting voice I've come to dread. You see now, don't you? Why are you doing this? I whispered, tears streaming down my eyes. They forgot me. They bury me like as without a second thought. Even your mother, she didn't cry, she didn't care. Do you think that's fair, Ada? I shook my head, my body trembling. It's not fair, but this isn't the way. You're hurting us. The dog stepped closer, his glowing eyes piercing into mine. Sometimes pain is the only way to be remembered. That night, I dreamt again. I was back in the dark field, but this time I wasn't alone. My mother was there, lying on the ground, her body frail and broken. My grandmother stood over her, face twisted with fury. Do you see now? She hissed, her voice cold and sharp. She deserves this. No, I screamed, throwing myself between them. She loved you. She didn't mean to forget. She didn't love me enough, my grandmother spat, and neither will you. I woke up gasping for air, my body drenched in sweat. The dog was sitting at the foot of my bed, its head tilted. You don't have to do this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's already done, the voice replied. The next morning, Mom was worse than ever. She could barely speak, her words slurred and incoherent. Dad was desperate, calling every doctor he could think of. I knew it wasn't an illness, it was her. That night, I confronted the dog. Leave her alone, I demanded, my hands clenched into fists. The dog's lips curled into a smile. Make me. I didn't know what came over me. I grabbed the nearest object, a broom, and swung it at the dog. It didn't flinch, didn't even try to dodge. The broom shattered against his body like it was made of steel. Foolish child, the voice said, its tone mocking. You can't fight me, I'm family. We've come to the end of the first part. I hope you did enjoy this amazing story. Please click on the bell button to get the second part. See you in my next video upload.